Hello audience, hello students. Today we will be talking about another aspect of translation, namely the polysystems theory, especially that part of polysystems theory of translation which pays more attention, focus, and I think ethical respect to the target text. First and foremost, you need to understand that we are translating not because of the need of the primary or original text or the linguistic community within which the text was emanated. Uh, Rather, we are translating, or the task or performance of translation is being executed primarily because there is a need of the secondary or target text and the linguistic and cultural community and context within which that text will be uttered, launched. Suppose a text is initially written in Bengali. We don't need the English translation for the Bengalis. The Bengali text is already there. So the English translation will pay more respect in case of a conflictual or not so equal contradiction between the needs of the Bengalis and the English on the needs of the English. The emphasis of translation, because translation, historically speaking or ethically speaking, is done not for wastage of time or outpour of spontaneous creative genius. It's another response of the responsible human being towards his surrounding, and his surrounding includes a multilingual community, so that the creative utterances and textual outputs in one language can be heard and comprehended in another language. That's why translation is made, which means that in case of any contestational situation where if you focus upon the needs of the language of the original text and purity of the original context, it will be a different set of signifiers. And if you are focusing on the easy, quick, and comprehensive receptivity in the second language or in the target language, then you will end up with a different set of signifiers. In such a case of dilemma, the dilemma is very easy to choose. You have to all ask yourselves, why am I translating? I am translating because the original text is already known to me in my mother tongue or in my first language or whatsoever, in my comprehensive and conducive linguistic frame of reference. So now I am translating not for myself but for the other, and hence when we are translating from Bengali to English, if the purity of the Bengali text has to be damaged, it will be damaged as per the ethical necessity of the translation. Just the reverse case will happen if we are translating from English to Bengali. Suppose we cannot accurately at all preserve the 100% original purity of the English text and its cultural elements which are enmeshed in the text in the Bengali translation. Because we are translating from English to Bengali, we are not translating it into Bengali for the need of the Englishman but for the need of the Bengali reader. So the necessity of gelling with Bengali context will be primary, and if the original English text has to be partially damaged for it or modified for it or inflected upon for it, it would be done so. We cannot eat the cake and have it. While translating from English to Bengali, we cannot say that we have to do a cultural translation or even transculturation for making it fitting into Bengali context, and at the same time we cannot again claim that when we are translating in the other way from Bengali to English that we need to preserve the Bengali purity in the name of post-colonial political correctness. Sometimes it is more important to have the ethical and aesthetic correctness than the political correctness. So we are looking into polysystems theory, and we have to understand what is polysystems. The word, if you break it into two parts, will be poly and system, which means that a text is not uttered, released, enunciated in a monolithic or unitary system. Suppose a text is written in Bengali, even that Bengali or the lang or single language called Bengali is not singular or monolithic or unitary. It is rather full of layers, full of levels, full of high cultural registers and low cultural registers, full of generic variations that the same thing can be named in different genres in different way. For example, Shorid in prose and Tonu in archaic verse, and that there are ideological selections also apart from the linguistic variations. So a language in which a text is produced and the language into which the translation will take place, none of these languages have a singular identity. None of these languages are 100% homogeneous. So what we are calling actually as a language is not a single language. It is a system, and the system is full of inner fissures and hidden narratives and heterogeneities. So it's a polysystem. And within this polysystem, there are centuries old conventions in every utterance. So in a language, suppose we say a word, and that word carries centuries of associations into it. At the same time, when there is a creative use of that utterance, a textuation of that signifier, let's say, and the author is maneuvering its usage with some kind of rhetorical innovativeness, then it has a kind of mutation or change from the ordinary and sedimented use of that word over the centuries. So there is a new mutation for every textual utterance, but it also carries within it a burden of cumulative, traditional, age-old sedimentations. So when we are looking into a text, we are not looking into a text, we are looking into a language. Even that is wrong, because we are not looking into a language, we are looking into a culture. Even that is wrong, because there is nothing called a culture or একটি সংস্কৃতি। শুধু বাঙালি সংস্কৃতি বলে কোনো হয় না। কোন বাঙালি সংস্কৃতি? পুরুলিয়ার, মালদার, শিষ্টচলিত ভাষার, বাঙাল ভাষার, ঘটি ভাষার. So every time we are into these socio-linguistic variations, there are other variations like political variations and chronological variations and historical variations and intentional variations and registers. Every time we are uttering a word which would make and compose the text, we are actually working in a polysystem. So let's say we have to translate not from Bengali language, because there is nothing singular called Bengali language, into English language, because there is nothing singular called English language, but from Bengali polysystems to English polysystems. And this is exactly where Gideon Torrey had intervened, and especially in his middle phase of development of his career and writings and essays and theories and tenets as a translator or a translation studies man, talked on the necessity to pay more respect to the target polysystem. So when we are translating from a Bengali text to an English text, we are actually translating from a Bengali polysystems to English polysystems, and each of these polysystems has a conservative and traditional storehouse for every word, and a mutation that is particular to that particular text only, because it is the innovativeness of that particular author. Had it been used, had the word or sentence been used elsewhere, it would be meaning something different. So Gideon theory is against equivalence of translation. Translation shouldn't try to seek equivalence to the original. Second thing, that when we are paying more respect to the original and trying to preserve the original text's originality, then the translation becomes normative, directive, supervised and hegemonized by the source. And this is, I would vehemently argue, absolutely wrong, because the same person who is claiming that author is not the owner of the meaning, the reader is the owner of the meaning, cannot claim that the original culture is to guide the translation. It is always the receiver who should be privileged should there occur any division or mutual incompatibility between the needs of the original and the needs of the target polysystems. So difference must be respected in the target polysystems, which means if we are translating from Bengali to English, it should become an English poem. If at all, it has to become a property of any languages. The best thing is that it will become neither English nor Bengali, but at least it will not be slavish to the Bengali. Same thing if we are translating from English to Bengali, it will become more Bengali than English in the translated version if we are following this dictum of Gideon theory. So every translation will bring in impurity and alloy to the act of translation for paying respect to the difference at which the other, the secondary language, the target language or the target polysystem stands. So now let's look into a poem by Jibanananda Das, one of my school days favorites, called Campe. And this was one of the controversial poems for which Jibanananda Das was alleged of obscenity at the level of signifier, for talking on woman's corporeality and the violence of female sexuality and male sexuality, while giving us an imagery of the absurdity of our life and of the chronic jeopardization and conflation between Eros and Thanatos at modernism. He used some signifiers which in Bengali polysystems would be obscene. Now let's see if we can translate from Bengali polysystems to English polysystems all the elements, including the element of obscenity. Because if we are translating, we should also be able to translate the controversy. এখানে বনের কাছে ক্যাম্প আমি ফেলিয়াছি. Now you see, কাছে is best translated in ordinary usage as near, but near the forest. It can be a big town actually with lots of TripAdvisor resorts. So proximity of geographical difference that is conducted by the signifier near is not a replacement for the word কাছে. বনের কাছে Bengali polysystems মানে বনের একদম প্রান্তে, at the limit where লোকালয় ends, মাঠ ends, ক্ষেত ends, রাস্তা ends and the বন begins. So it's that liminal boundary. So the best alternative is verge. Secondly, the word verge is not only a place adverb, like the word কাছে. Kache is not only a geographical word, it doesn't only mean geographically kache. Say if we say kacher manush, that doesn't mean that the manush is standing beside me geographically or physically in terms of distance. It means uh, something that is pulling me, something that is attracting me. And since in this poem we will find that the forest is attracting the ideology and aesthetics of the poet or the lyric speaker, therefore the word verge is the perfect substitute for the word kache instead of words like edge, brink, rim and side, which are very sharp. But the word kache doesn't have in Bengali polysystems that sharpness. You see the word brink, rim, side, edge, they are very, very sharp edged, and they are quite painful in their auditory perceptions generated by their consonants. But verge and kache, although kache is bisyllabic and verge is monosyllabic, yet I think that's the closest polysystems element in the lexicality of L2 or English language. And instead of boner kache as a forest or the forest, which is entirely meaningless if we are understanding what this means. You see, in tiger burning bright in the forests of the night, Blake used the word forest in plural instead of the forest of the night and a forest of the night. And tonight we are talking about, Jivanananda is talking about that type of wildness, that type of a woodland, that type of a jungle. So just like forests of the night, this is also a forest of the night. আমি pitch camp, now ফেলিয়াছি, জাল ফেলিয়াছি জলে, বা ক্যাম্প ফেলিয়াছি, তাবু ফেলিয়াছি, that in Bengali polysystems, in the caravan based camping practices of the Anglophone community, cannot be I set up camp or I put up camp or a situated camp, but I pitch camp. This is the age-old image, element, signifier, verb that is required in the English polysystems if we are translating from Bengali polysystems to the English polysystems. So we are discarding put up or set up. সারা রাত দক্ষিণা বাতাসে আকাশের চাঁদের আলোয় এক ঘাই হরিণীর ডাক শুনি. So all night long the zephyr from the south carries into the moon. এখানে একটা জিনিস বলে রাখা দরকার যে moonbeam বা moonlight, যেটা জেনারেলি মিউজিক্যাল লিরিক্সে খুব ইউজ হয় to keep the syllable structure intact. You need a bisyllabic word, so you use the word moonbeam or moonlight or moon ray. But in the English polysystems, especially in the time of Jivanananda Das or Edward Thomas, almost the same utterer to my comparative appreciation, moon means Jyotsna. You don't need another moonlight or moonbeam here until and unless absolutely demanded by need to demarcate the object moon from the effect of moonlight, which is not required here. You see, it's Shararat Dokhina Batashe Akasher Chander Aloe. Had we been respectful to the original, then plus you see there is this controversial element in the Bengali polysystems related to the word Ghai Horini, because this phrase is absolutely a dual level compound of an Assamese slang, also used by the fishermen in South 24 Parganas. Ghai, which is some kind of a weak creature used as a bait for bigger, more violent creatures. And the Totshamo Bengali word Horini, and you have, although the word Horini is not Margiya, Mriga will be the Margiyo Tatsama, but it's a Desi Tatsama. So we have two layers. Ghai is coming from one microsystem. Horini is coming from one microsystem, but in the Bengali microsystem, Jivanananda is combining the two and making this utterance Ghai Horini. Now, Ghai Horini duck shouldn't be translated as call of the doe, or I think that here, when we are translating it into English, the subject should be shifted from Ami or I or the lyric speaker to the you or second person. Kare she dake, whom does she call? This phrase is not working good in English polysystems. In the convention of apostrophe, here the irony and the understatement can both be conducted only if we are making it a second person utterance. And Ghai Horini duck shouldn't be translated, as I said, as call of the doe, because there is in English polysystems already existing time-tested beautiful expression for it, with that fixed comprehensiveness that in Bengali polysystems Ghai Horini duck would have created in the mind of the reader, and that is stress bleats of the female deer, which is hind. So that's it. We had to say sky is the moon or moon in the sky, but we are not saying anything like that. কোথাও হরিণী আজ হতেছে শিকার, বনের ভিতরে আজ শিকারীরা আসিয়াছে, আমিও তাদের ঘ্রাণ পাই যেন এইখানে বিছানায় শুয়ে শুয়ে ঘুম আর আসে না কো বসন্তের রাতে. Somewhere the deer are hunted tonight. Poachers, they invaded forests today. Am I smelling them too? On my camp bed this vernal night is sleepless. এখানে the poet is sleepless, কিন্তু এখানে we are using the transferred epithet because this is the figure of speech with which the English polysystems is quite familiar to. So this vernal night is sleepless instead of the আত্মনেপদী আমি ঘুমাচ্ছি না or পরস্মৈপদী subjective ঘুম আসে না কো, we are using total indirectness by the pathetic fallacy, and subject or karta of the sentence is the night of the spring, which itself is sleepless. Actually this is preserving the rhyme structure of the original, but it is also being respectful to the English polysystems. চারিপাশে বনের বিস্ময় চৈত্রের বাতাস. চৈত্র is not, they are in English polysystems, so it will be spring or vernal wind. And instead of wonders of the forest, which Clifford Seeley insisted on, we have a very nice alliterative like বনের বিস্ময়, world wonders, because the word world originally in German, but quite frequently used in English, especially the time that Jivanananda was writing, and this wild aspect of the wood was seen as a modernist image instead of a romantic image per se. So world wonders all around. Vernal wind brings as if the taste of Luna. Jyotsnar shorirer shad cannot be translated as the test of the body of moonbeam. It has to be, see, why we are using Luna? Because of the English polysystems, because of the Western polysystems, in which the Latin influence on English language has made the equivalent terms of solar bodies and celestial bodies and cosmonautical bodies, which are all proper nouns, and sometimes common nouns like sun and moon, available from the classical language to the English language, as if they have become totally English. So instead of moon and moonlight, we can say Luna. And when we say Luna, the femininity of the sound and the femininity of the cultural association that the Englishman is tempted to make with the word Luna actually brings this erotic aspect, Jyotsnar Shorirer Shad, which will not be there if we are using the word moonbeam here. And it's the hind bleats in profuse thick of wood where the moon fears to tread. The bucks nod, they rush. এখানে অনেকে ডো, এখানে অনেকে স্ট্যাগ ইউজ করে, but we are talking about the mating season of the deer, and I have retained the colloquial hind and bucks instead of doe and stag, because number one, the word doe in English polysystems would make it quite slangish. Although Ghai Horini, the imagery may contain some form of obscenity, in the Bengali polysystems it doesn't contain anything slang or pervert, but the word doe is derogatory if it is used in this sentence. And same, the word stag would be too phallic to be used in a poem where the male poet has opened up the doors of his perception and negative capability to the existential crisis of the conflation of Eros and Thanatos in modernity.